Okay. All right. We're recording now. We're off to the races. I hope you all had a great weekend. Welcome to fall. It just kind of happened yesterday, overnight, which I'm not complaining about. It's the best season. Fall is the best season, and I don't want to hear anything to the contrary. Time to break out my cardigans and get my soy lattes. Just kidding, but not really. So what we're going to do today is introduce. We're going to introduce the next segment of our class. Really, we spent the first 5 weeks talking about prehistory. We talked about a lot of ancient societies. We talked about Greece. We're finally done with Greece. We're moving on to Rome, and Rome is the next big pit stop in looking at the evolution of Western civilization. So what I want to do today is just talk about Rome. I want to introduce it. Some of the stuff overlaps with the textbook. A lot of it is new information. So I think it's going to be a good adjunct to have alongside the textbook reading for Rome as we gear up for the next couple weeks of Rome talk. Because honestly, there's a lot to grapple with here. So that's what we're doing today. If you have any questions along the way, simply let me know. Just, unmute and call out, and I'll be happy to stop and answer any questions. So we're looking at the foundations of Rome today. We're going to be looking at the foundations of the Roman Republic form of government, where the Latins came from, and also how they were able to parlay a major war or a series of wars into building their empire. And then, from there on, it's things just get nasty with partisan politics and the growth of the empire and the overthrow of the government and all that fun stuff. So we're just going to be introducing the first things of that today. My voice is a little scratchy because I just got done ranting about communism and Marxism in my last class. I'm going to take lots of water breaks here. So the founding of Rome can be traced back to the 8th century BC or BCE in the Italian peninsula. There's this whole kind of fun mythos wrapped around the founding of Rome. And it's not quite mentioned in a lot of detail in your book, so I like to hover on this. The myth of the founding of Rome goes like this. There were two brothers that fled the fall of Troy. And we didn't really talk about the Trojan War much in this class, but I'm sure this is the whole story of the Iliad in Homer's Iliad. The Trojan horse and all that good stuff. I'm sure you're familiar with that on some level. There's this idea that in Rome, Rome is kind of one of the destinations for some of the refugees of Troy. So Troy was this big, strong city. It was awesome. It had this royal house, amazing warriors, but it got destroyed by those pesky other Greeks. Two brothers of Troy, they're sons of a Trojan prince. So they're part of the ruling house of Troy. They made their way to Italy, and they started building a new city in Italy alongside the Tiber River. Romulus and Remus were these two brothers, and they were orphaned as kids because they're refugees. They were raised by wolves. And there's these bronze images of a she-wolf and these two brothers suckling at the teat of these wolves. Like, they're literally raised by wolves, and they kind of have wolf DNA in them. This gives you a little bit of a hint of how the Romans conceive of themselves. These fierce warriors, they're crafty and smart like wolves are. They're not afraid to fight. But the story gets better. One of the brothers kills the other brother, and he names the city after himself. So the city of Rome gets its name from Romulus, one of these brothers, because he kills his brother Remus when they're building the walls of the city. And this is all legend. This is not historical fact, but Romulus is working on building the walls of Rome. And Remus takes a shortcut. He's carrying building materials from outside the city to inside the city. And he hops over an unfinished section of the wall that's like maybe, a foot high or something. But he hops over this wall, and Romulus takes this as an extreme insult and kills his brother because he says, nobody shall traverse the walls of my city without my permission. He goes so far as to kill his own brother because his brother refused to recognize the sanctity of the walls of Rome and how strong the city was going to be, even before it was built. So there's this crazy founding myth. It's not real, but still it's fun. It's, this is how the Romans, it gives you a little insight into how the Romans viewed their own identity as this kind of warrior people who were very proud and smart and, very well established in Italy. The real kind of archaeological evidence points to something very different than the whole Trojan refugee story. Basically, the way that Romans came about was they were part of this greater tribal system of the Latin people. They're called the Latins because that was their language. They spoke Latin. So going forward, you can Latin is synonymous with Roman in a lot of ways. There's the series of Latin tribes that live in the middle of Italy. They were under the thrall of a northern kingdom called the Etruscans, but sometime around the 6th century, they gain their independence from the Etruscans, and Rome becomes its own city-state with its own sovereignty, its own laws. They also had their own kings. They put in, once they gained independence from the Etruscans, they formed a kingdom, because that's what you do. Most ancient peoples have kings. That's the default mode of government. However, from the get-go, the Romans are different than a lot of other ancient peoples insofar as they, from day one, when they set up the kingdom, their kings were limited in what they could do by law. They could not, for instance, go to war unilaterally with anyone they wanted. They had to get permission from like a council of elders or something. I forget how it goes. They were restricted from raising taxes without the permission of a few important people in the community. So from day one, the Roman kings are restricted in their power. And this gives us another insight into the Roman model of civilization. They believe in no one man should have unlimited power over the entire system of Roman government, except in times of great emergency. And that is very, very, very different than what you see most of the time throughout ancient history. After about 50 years or so, I think it's like 50, 60 years, the Romans just do away with their kings altogether. They're like, you know what? We don't need kings. Kings are stupid. They had a particularly corrupt or weak king, and they overthrew him, and they set up a different government of their own invention called a republic. And this is one of the great inventions of Roman civilization. Obviously, we live in a constitutional democratic republic in the United States, so a lot of their ideas have carried forward. But Rome they have this instinct to protect their society from corruption and from abuse of power, at least for the first several hundred years of their existence. And they do a pretty good job at it. So one of the central tenets of a republic, for the most part, I mean, you don't need to have this, but a lot of republics have the series of checks and balances built into the system. This is true for the United States. This is true for most modern democracies. And by the way, a republic in its simplest definition is simply a form of government that relies in part on elected representatives to represent the will of the people. That's what a republic is in its base form. The United States is definitely a republic in this way. We have a Congress, you know. But built into that is kind of this need for checks and balances. If you're going to have representatives of the people, not all the people are going to be on the same page about things at all times, right? You're not going to have 100% agreement on issues. So to keep things from falling apart and descending into anarchy, you need checks and balances to make sure that this system works and stuff gets done. There are 3 branches of government in the Roman system. This sounds familiar, right? 3 branches of government. The first is the Senate. The Senate is exclusively staffed by the aristocracy, by the most important families in Rome. They are landowning. They're oftentimes very wealthy. Some of them are more wealthy than others, but they're all men, and they're all men of privilege. They're guys who don't have to work real jobs, right? And they sit around and they debate. They make decrees. They essentially run most of the Roman government. They oversee foreign policy. They'll make treaties with other nations or other neighbors, you know, with Rome. They'll also come up with the budget for the government. This is reflected still in the American model. There's in the United States Senate, there's the Foreign Relations Committee, which is very powerful and helps set foreign policy for the United States. Congress in general sets the budget for the United States, or they would if we actually had a budget. We haven't had a budget in the United States for several years now. We tend to just, I don't know, we just make things up as we go, and we have emergency funding, and we'll stave off government shutdowns for a few months at a time, and that's how we run the government now, which is really bad. But ideally, Congress would make a budget. One of the other branches of government in the Roman Republic is the legislative assemblies. This is more of like the local level of things. This is where the plebes, or the common people, the plebeians, or the kind of the commoners of Rome, they have a democratic system where they elect, one person, one vote, local office holders in their communities, in their neighborhoods. The city of Rome is divided up into districts, so they'll elect district leaders, kind of mini mayors of their district. These legislative assemblies are also the closest thing that we would equate to as the judicial branch, if we're coming from the United States model. There's no Supreme Court or anything, but there are local judges that decide court cases. Those are elected by the legislative assemblies, or appointed by the legislative assemblies. And they also appoint the magistrates, which is the third branch of government. Excuse me. And the magistrates are basically what we would equate to as executive officers, the executive branch of the US. Like, there's not a clean one-for-one translation between like the United States Republic and the Roman Republic, but you see similarities. Like, there's some overlap. The magistrates are the executives, and they, by and large, serve, at least in the later years of the Republic, they serve one-year terms. They can't do the same job for consecutive years. To the Romans, that's considered an abuse of power. And they're so afraid, their government model is so afraid of abuse of power that they mandate that if someone is in charge as an executive, whatever office it is, the lowest level or the highest level, they cannot repeat that same job again for a decade. So like, you know, to equate this to the American model, we would elect a new president every year. And that same president could not hold power for more than a year until a decade is up. And the reason for this is simply to limit the amount of power that individuals can accrue in government, right? Like the Romans built into their system an anti-corruption measure. Now the downside is that you get new people coming into office every year and they have to learn the ropes again. And like, there's a lot of starting from scratch, but that's worth it to the Romans if we can prevent people from abusing their power. The most famous of these magistrate offices were the consuls. The consuls are about as close as we could get to the president. They were the highest rank of magistrate. There were always two of them in the Roman system. They served as like co-presidents of the Republic. In peacetime, they would preside over some of the courts. They would advise the Senate on policy matters. In wartime, they would lead the nation or the armies of Rome in the field. So they were the generals. And they would take turns, since there were two of them, they would switch off every day. Every other day, you were in charge of the Roman legions and you were commander in chief for the day. And then, you know, the next day, it's your buddy who's in charge and he gets to call the shots. So again, this very entrenched idea of balance of power, sharing power, making sure, you know, not one person has complete dominion over large swaths of the Republic, right? This is what the Roman Republic is built on, is this idea of checks and balances. Now these rules change over time. They're kind of slippery, but what I'm giving you is like by and large, like what you could expect if you lived under the Roman Republic. You know, term limits change from time to time and yada, yada, the rules change, but by and large, this is what it looked like. Are there any questions so far? Oh my gosh. I'm losing my voice. Okay, so a word on Roman culture. Your book talks about this a little bit, but I want to elucidate some of the main points. Roman culture is heavily based on masculinity. The man is the head of the household. We'll talk about the kind of cultural law that they have in a moment. But everything is based on the idea of the man being the ideal human being. And he takes care of his family just as the Republic takes care of its citizens. You know, it's a very family-based society, very, you know, conservative, you know, right-wing Christians would appreciate in some way the Roman model because it's that the way they define family values is a very Roman idea, and that's not an accident. When we see the rise of Christianity, it intertwines with Roman culture pretty heavily in its earliest centuries, and we see that today. Loyalty to one's family, loyalty to Rome is paramount. And to kind of hammer this point home, your book mentions this a little bit. There's this cultural law in Rome called patria potestas that, you know, the Latin translation from this basically means the father is the dictator of the household. The father has ultimate authority over his family. Like there's very little that a dad could do to his wife or kids that would involve him being hauled before a court. for abuse of his power. This is one area where the Romans turn a complete blind eye to one man having ultimate authority, and that's at the household level. So it was not uncommon, for instance, for fathers to of a household to sell certain of their children into slavery to settle debts that they might have had. You know, if dad needs to pay off his credit card bill, he can sell Jimmy on the market and wipe out debt that way. There's no such thing as child abuse. There's no such thing as spousal abuse. The father can do whatever he wants to his family, and it's fine. So this gives you an idea of kind of where the authority in Rome lies, and it's with men. It's with men all the time. Women are very much shoved into the corner, and at all times. So, yeah. Another staple of Roman culture is ancestor worship. They do lift a lot of their gods from other neighboring religions, but one of the staples of Roman tradition is worship of one's ancestors and praying to them for favor and for help. Again, it kind of reinforces this whole idea of family as being crucial to Rome and Roman culture. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Gladiator at all. It's an older movie by now. It's 20 years old now. It came out when I was in middle school, which makes me feel really old. But it's this Russell Crowe movie where Russell Crowe plays this Roman general in the beginning of the movie, and there's a scene of him setting up little wooden totems, little wooden figures in front of some candles, and he's praying to them, and that's ancestor worship. Like he's praying to his ancestors for help and for wisdom. You should see Gladiator. I don't know if it's on any streaming service or something, but if you haven't seen the movie Gladiator, it's a very good representation of Roman culture. Maybe not real historical events, but it's a really good look at Roman culture. Roman religion borrows heavily from the Greeks. There's a lot of trade, a lot of cultural intercourse between Greece and Rome. Greece was well established way before Rome. And so Rome looks to Greece for a lot of its religious ideas. They end up borrowing almost all of the Greek gods and then renaming them with Roman names. So Ares, the Greek god of war, becomes Mars. Zeus, the kind of daddy of most of the pantheon in Greece, is renamed to Jupiter, right? So basically any planet you can think of, that's a Romanization of a Greek god. So this is where a lot of religious and cultural values come from, is either homegrown or borrowed from Greece. And just again, I want to reiterate that women don't play a very important role in most of Roman, I shouldn't say they don't play an important role, they're very important. Roman women do not play a very prominent role in the history of Rome because they are treated like property a lot of the time. Women do not have a right to vote. They don't have a right to hold property. They don't have a right to have a say in what happens in Roman society at all. It's the man show from the years of the early Republic all the way to the collapse of the empire. It's the man show in Rome. So that's why we're not really talking about women very much in this segment of the class, because they're just simply shoved to the side. And when we get to the Byzantines, we talk about like Justinian and all that, then we start to see women appearing in Latin tradition, but it's not for several hundred years, really. They don't have any decision-making power. So, okay, I'm going to try and blast through the Punic Wars. I'm not going to hover for very long on any one thing. But in the earliest years of the Roman Republic, they have an enemy. Rome ends up consolidating power in Italy pretty well. They make friends with all their neighbors. When they do go to war against a neighboring city-state and conquer them, they don't tax the hell out of them. Instead, all Rome asks from a conquered enemy is to send them troops, to send them manpower to supplement the Roman legions. So in that way, Rome is kind of a good neighbor, even to its other Italian enemies. And Rome forges this kind of mini empire throughout the Italian peninsula on its way up. However, at the same time, across the Mediterranean Sea in Africa, there's another city-state called Carthage. And they are the main rival to Rome's power during the years of the Republic. Carthage is based in North Africa. It is a mercantile city-state. They have trading colonies and trading posts set up all throughout the Mediterranean Sea. They inherit a bunch of them actually from Greece when Greece kind of falls down and goes boom. They inherit a lot of the lucrative trade that happens from Greece. To maintain control over this vast trade network, they have a very large and sophisticated navy, the best navy in the Mediterranean. The greatest navy, the best navy, you wouldn't believe it, so great. They have, like I said, colonies and trading posts throughout the Mediterranean. And we'll take a look at a map in just a second that gives you an idea of just how widespread Carthage is. The flip side of this, though, is that if Rome has a very strong army, so like the Roman army is awesome. The Roman army is advanced in its own right in ways of equipment and tactics and training. But the Romans have very little in the way of a navy. Carthage is like the opposite of that. They're the exact opposite of Rome in lots of different ways. They don't have a standing army. Instead, what they do to maintain security in their empire is they pay for mercenaries from neighboring tribes. They'll pay them a ton of gold to come in, fight for Carthage. And this ends up being kind of a weakness of the Carthaginians, but it works out for them in their earliest years because they're able to save a lot of money by not having to pay for a standing army. So this map that you can see here, everything in red, I'm sorry if anyone's colorblind. I didn't really think about that. But you know, Rome is up here in the Italian peninsula. By the time we get to the Punic Wars, this war between Rome and Carthage, Rome controls, either through conquest or alliances, most of Italy. But they don't really have any overseas territories. Contrast that with Carthage, which is down here in North Africa. I believe it's modern day, oh gosh, I want to say modern day Algeria, Tunisia, Libya. I'm really bad when it comes to geography.
Primarily Tunisia, but a little bit of all over the place as well.
Yeah.
Carthage is in Tunis, the city.
Tunis, okay. So modern day Tunisia. Thank you. Again, African geography, not my strong suit. So Carthage is based down here, but they have city-states all throughout North Africa. They have a large holding in Spain, or what becomes Spain, the Iberian Peninsula. They control the Balearic Islands, Corsica, Sardinia, and they start to colonize Sicily, which is right off the boot of Italy, right? This is Rome's literal backyard in geopolitical terms. This is what causes the tension. Like, the Romans don't care about Carthage. They're like, whatever, you know, we're happy to just chill out in Italy. But when Carthage starts to take control of the island of Sicily, right off the boot of Italy, and in particular, try and bully the city of Syracuse into becoming a major ally of Carthage, that's when the Romans go, no, no way, no, this is a national security threat. You know, this is the Soviets putting nuclear missiles off the coast of Florida in Cuba during the Cold War. This is like, no, we're not going to allow this. It's too close. So this sparks a series of wars. these empires kind of expanding sparks a series of wars called the Punic Wars. And Punic kind of comes from like the Latin word for Carthage. So it's essentially, Rome versus Carthage. There's 3 different iterations of this war. The first one, I'll be honest with you, is not worth talking about in detail. It's a really boring war. It's mostly fought over control of Sicily, this island. Rome sees it as a national security threat to have a rival controlling the nearest island to Rome. And it's mostly this back and forth. One side will gain the upper hand and then lose it, and then the other side will gain, and it's just this wash of a war for many years. Eventually, it's pretty boring to talk about really in terms of detail. The one detail I want to hone in on, because it gives us another insight into Roman problem solving and Roman ingenuity. The Romans eventually win this war. And they do so on the sea, which is crazy because the Carthaginians have the most advanced navy of anybody during the period. So how do the Romans win? Well, they're able to win by retrofitting the small navy that they have to play to their strengths, which is the Romans are really good at land combat, right? Their army is awesome. But you can't fight hand to hand when you're fighting boat to boat. So what the Romans do, and this is genius, they retrofit their existing ships as troop carriers, where they have, and you can kind of see in this picture here, I know it's not a great like clip art picture, but it's all I got. They put like a plank, like a gangplank on the bow of their ships with like a tooth on the end of the plank. And they'll sail up to a Carthaginian war vessel and drop the plank so that it latches onto the other ship. And this allows the Roman legion troops to board the other boats and fight hand to hand, which is what the Romans are good at. So essentially the Romans are able to win this war by translating their strength on land to the sea. And they're able to win naval combat not by fighting ship to ship, but by fighting hand to hand, which is really ingenious of them. So eventually the Romans win decisive naval battles by doing this very thing, by bringing their strengths to an unforeseen area of the fighting. This ends the war. Rome and Carthage sign a peace treaty. Rome has control over Sicily. The Carthaginians go home. There's a second war, though, that breaks out a generation later. And this time it's Carthage is the main aggressor in this. They kind of want revenge for their humiliation. Hannibal is the main Carthaginian war mind in this war. He's a brilliant general, and he kind of provokes Rome into going to war again. This time, though, he's got a plan, and his plan is to sneak attack Rome from they're going to invade Rome. Like Carthage was rarely able to land any troops in Italy just because of the conditions of the First Punic War. What Hannibal does is he takes an army, lands them in Spain, which is one of Carthage's colonies, and he marches an army throughout all the way up north to the Alps, the Italian Alps, and crosses the mountains and invades Italy that way. So it's a sneak attack. And what makes this remarkable is he has several dozen war elephants from North Africa that form his shock troops. And he invades Italy through the mountains with elephants. This is pretty cool because most Romans had never seen an elephant before. They're native to Africa. Most Romans don't go there. And so when they see these big hulking gray beasts with built-in spears you know, alongside these long, you know, noses, they freak out and they don't know what to do. It's this panic that strikes the Roman legions in battle after battle because they don't know how to fight elephants. There's these huge hulking things with armor and archers placed on them. Hannibal wins a series of very big, important battles in the first years of this war. Hannibal kicks Roman ass for years. He even places the city of Rome under siege for a short time. But through sheer determination, the Romans are able to win mostly by attrition. They're able to pick off, you know, troops here and there from the Carthage army and just are gradually able to win the upper hand. Now, this is a long war. It's like a 16, 17-year long war. And eventually, Rome invades Africa and is able to defeat Hannibal in combat in Africa, but at the cost of hundreds of thousands of Roman lives. Like Rome comes this close to losing this war many times. And just by sheer determination, they pull through and they end up winning again. So there's a third, you know, Punic War, which is basically Rome just burning Carthage to the ground. Like, it's barely a war because Carthage is powerless after Hannibal's defeat. We never really hear from them again. So and this is the last slide I've got. On the tail of the Punic Wars, these wars between Rome and Carthage, Rome becomes the undisputed master of the Mediterranean. They inherit a lot of the colonies that Carthage used to have in Spain, throughout the Mediterranean islands, Corsica, Sicily, Sardinia, the Balearic Islands. North Africa becomes a Roman province. But they also go on to conquer Macedonia and Greece, the center of our story from the last few weeks. The Greek city-states are powerless against the Roman legions, and they fall pretty quickly to conquest. Spain is united under Roman domain, like the entirety of the Iberian Peninsula. So Spain and modern-day Spain and Portugal become Roman territories. We also get the conquest of parts of modern-day France, which was called Gaul at the time. So the Romans are building up an ever-growing empire, even before it became formally an empire. Like, this is during the Republic still. This is still like the Senate running the show. We don't even have dictators and emperors yet. So when Rome, this is the downside of this part of Roman history. They're doing great. They're kicking butt wherever they go. They can't stop conquering. But without a major enemy, an external enemy to fight against Rome, like, there's no main threat against Roman power in that part of the world. Without an external enemy to unite against, the Romans start bickering with one another. They start forming factions in the Roman Senate. They start fighting and they start really tearing down the balance of power that had kept the Republic running for several hundred years at that point. So in this period of conquest and expansion, we actually see the Roman Republic start to rot from within. And we see the rise of very powerful senators start to manipulate the public. This is called populism. We've heard that term a lot in the last 5 years or so in global politics, not just American politics, but it's happening throughout the West, where you'll have demagogues, you'll have a person preying on the fears of the common people and promising them things in return for support and votes. This is Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, has become a dictator in the last 10 years. This is happening in Poland right now. There's the Donald Trump, for God's sakes, ran on a populist platform 5 years ago. So you get these very powerful figures preying on the fears of the common people and promising them things in support for, possibly launching a coup or overthrowing their enemies in the Senate. This is Cataline. This picture here in the bottom right, there's a senator named Cataline, and he essentially launches a civil war in Rome because he wants to be consul. He loses the election to become consul of Rome, and he lashes out by calling for essentially a civil war because he's jealous of other people's power. Like, this is what Rome has devolved into. And he gains power by promising the plebes, the common people of Rome, free bread, tax breaks, property. When we make Rome great again, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do all these things, and we're going to get rid of the corrupt, Senate that's kept you oppressed for so long. So this leads to a series of constitutional crises in Rome itself, where we eventually get the rise of Julius Caesar, who was an early supporter of Cataline. We get the rise of Octavian, becomes Caesar Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. We get the transformation of Rome from the series of checks and balances republic to a government that is tearing itself apart because individuals don't care for the rule of law. Like, they don't care about the constitutional integrity of the Roman Republic, and they seek to gain power at all costs, which is a very familiar refrain throughout history and even up into the present. So that's what I've got for you guys today. I'll post this on Blackboard if you want to revisit it. But that's essentially, where we're going to stop for today. Does anyone have any questions about any of this?
I have a question about what we're going to cover next. Are we going to cover the Roman Civil Wars, or are we going to go straight to the Empire?
I would like to spend some time on the Civil Wars. Yeah. If this were normal times, non-COVID, what we would do in this class is we would actually have like a role-playing game in the class where we would like act out the entirety of the crisis of and which is a very, very, very cool game. I simply am not able to do that online. It's too difficult to do. I can't get everybody's schedules on the same page, all that stuff. But I love talking about the Roman Civil War because it's kind of important. We can draw a lot of lessons from it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering.
Yeah.
The curriculum, I guess.
Yeah. So for Friday, we will be discussing a couple of documents relating to Roman legal tradition, which I know it probably doesn't sound like the most exciting thing in the world, but I want to reinforce this idea that the Romans have a very specific concept of how to run a good government. So you'll be looking at the 12 tables, and you'll be looking at one of Cicero's weird schizophrenic conversations with himself about what constitutes the nature of law and the nature of good government. So that's our Friday thing. And then next week we get into the imperial side of stuff, which is pretty cool. So I suspect next Tuesday we'll talk about the Civil Wars.
We might find laws boring, but the Romans thought that was the most important part about themselves, about their laws.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is important for American history too. Like the founding fathers look back on on the Roman writing. They looked at Cicero, like they reread their Cicero. They're like, how do we set up a republic that actually, guarantees rights and makes it so that the people can rule themselves instead of being ruled by a king. It is, not a very sexy topic, but it's incredibly important for, harmony, like living in a country that's abides by certain laws. It's kind of important, especially right now. All right. Well, thanks, guys. This is great. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you Friday for the document discussion. If you have any questions between now and then, just let me know. Otherwise, go Rome. I'll see you guys later.